just give it a couple minutes and people will come in here
Yeah, no
and
rush.
should be good. Oh yeah, here we go.
So, who and do you want desired outcome? Question mark.
Okay. All right, cool. I am gonna go live here. Okay, sweet. Awesome. Welcome to another Friday workshop, everybody. This is one of our ongoing GHL Power Tools things that we're trying to continually do. I love the idea of these Friday workshops. And today we have Matt Ratliff with us. And Matt Ratliff is the founder of Funnel Techie and my inbox IQ. And he is an email deliverability expert. I'm just going to share his Facebook uh, thing here. It says inbox or bust. Um, email deliverability is the game. And it's something that we all struggle with. I know there's a lot of agencies that I talk with who want to know how to get more of their stuff to or their emails to land in the inbox. And I know it's something that I've coached a few people on, but I am nowhere near an expert on making that happen. I just know a few things of making sure some things are in place. But we've got a good chat here today with Matt. And Matt and I, so welcome, Matt.
Thank you.
Matt and I met in, I've followed Matt for a really long time through the high level Facebook group. And I think we were in a seminar in Dallas. And I think you gave me your card there. And I'm like, oh, I know who you are. And you're like, what? You know who I am? I'm like, yeah, I know who you are. And then we met outside one day, just sitting there. And I'm like, hey, let's go for lunch. So went to a great little Irish pub and had some food and caught
Great
up
little
and
place.
everything. And it was awesome. So yeah, I thought I'd reach out to Matt here today to jump on with us and school us on email and deliverability and landing in the inbox and everything you need to know. So
Yeah. And I'm happy to, yeah, thanks for having me on. I'm happy to share some knowledge. And I don't know how these normally work. Are these interactive? Am I just going to be talking the whole time or how do you
you know
see this
what? We
happening?
could do whatever we want because the format is completely open. And
Okay,
so
cool. I like that.
if I know so like yeah, I know I've got some questions just to kind of get us kicked
Mhm.
off about and like just a few little stories, but I know one of the main things with that I've always told people with making sure their emails land in the inbox. I know there's a lot of things, but one thing that I try to push everybody to do is just make sure that like the email addresses that they're sending from are congruent, like their
Mhm.
domain lines up with the email addresses that they're using in
Yes.
funnels and stuff like that. So I try to make all our snapshots do that kind of stuff where it's like you put it in one place and then you're good.
Yeah.
Um, and then maybe, yeah, if you want to give us some tips or touch on that idea, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, well, one thing to that point, something that I have noticed with some clients that I've worked with off and on is that let's say that they're putting out some ads, right? They put out some ads, someone sees it, they're kind of interested in whatever it is that you're providing, and they come in through an opt-in. But then when the email arrives, the person that opted in through the ad, they're like, well, what is this? There's no real congruency. So it could be in the name that's displayed. It could be in the maybe the domain that's provided inside the email. I
Right.
do see that pretty often. And so that is a number one thing. So when you guys are thinking through that, just make sure that it's apparent. So if someone saw your ad and they click that link and they've opted in, make sure that the email that comes their way provides some congruency so that they're aware that that is the ad that they opted in through. And, that kind of makes sense. I think that's obvious, but I
Yeah.
do see that quite often. And you'd be surprised at the damage that could cause if that congruency is not there.
I like that just from like a marketing standpoint,
Yeah.
just from a marketing standpoint and having people open up your email, right? We talk about a lot if there's a disconnect between you signed up for something through like let's say you sign up for something through Funnel Techie and then you get an email from my inbox IQ or something, right? That like
Yeah.
two different things going on. But I see a lot of people do that, but they'll also just send it from their personal email or
Mhm.
something like that they'll have in high level. So
Yeah.
so it's just not connected. So how does that work for like when we're looking at like servers and stuff like that? Sending from one email address. So it doesn't impact you if you're sending from, let's say, you don't have a dedicated domain inside your
Mhm.
high level account
Mhm.
for sending email. Because it'll say like sending from this email via high level or something like that, or lead connector, I think is what it says or something.
Yeah. Yeah, so that let me give you guys a little bit of context about
Sure.
what was just mentioned. So last year, Google and Yahoo both, actually, this started in October of 2023. They announced that they're basically wanting there to be better alignment with authentication with emails that they're receiving. And they started that process back in October of 2023. And they mentioned that certain things were going to come live starting around February of 2024. And so, what did that mean? Well, it just meant that you need a true custom domain that you're sending email from. Used to, with high level, you could go in, open up an account, connect it to a mailgun domain or whatever. But
Mhm.
when you went to go send the email would be displayed as, Matt at FunnelTechie via mg.highlevel.com, something
Yeah.
like that. And so whenever it's displayed in that way, that just means that your from display field. So whenever you go in and, create the email, there's a from email address field that you put in. And so that would be different than the actual sending address that the email is being pushed through. So alignment's not there. So if you're still using that sort of practice, just know that if you're sending enough bulk email in that context, that will be detrimental on both domains because now there's two domains inside of the envelope, and it's going to wreak havoc on both. So the better way forward is to create some alignment. And I can give you guys a little bit more insight. So if it's okay, I'd like to share my screen.
You can for sure.
Yeah, let me get my email pulled up. Give me
I
just a
know
moment.
through like we used to use a convert kit and we used to you do like active campaign and all those ones. And those ones like back in like years ago, we never had a dedicated domain. And it was all this sent via convert kit, this sent via
Yeah,
whatever.
yeah.
Um, one or the other as far as like being congruent and in alignment. Um, yeah, okay.
Yeah, so this is the way that I send my emails, and I'll break it apart here in just a moment. So I would imagine that probably the majority of us is using Google for emails, but what you could look at is that when you come down here, the most important thing is that if you're looking at my from display field, so inside of my GHL account, so anytime that you make a purchase of any of my products or anytime that you receive a marketing email, that is coming from GHL. And so in my from display field, if I'm sending a marketing bulk campaign, then that's going to come from my m.funneltakey.com subdomain. And notice that I'm using it in my from display field. And I'll talk about that more here in just a second, which aligns with my domain key field or the DKIM. So this signed by references the domain key or DKIM. So this right here is the most important aspect of your foundation. It's basically an RSA key token. There's a public form and a private form. A lot of technical jargon that kind of goes behind it, but this is the most important field. The mail by line is an SPF field. But what's most
Okay.
important that I want to just call out is that whenever you're creating a domain, whether that be inside of LC email or Mailgun, let's say that you chose to use mg.domain.com. Okay,
Hmm.
so that's underlying what you've got connected. When you go and configure your emails, just make sure that in your from line that you're including that same subdomain. The reason I like seeing emails done in this fashion is because you're creating that tier of isolation, meaning that in my world, funneltakey.com is connected to my Google Workspace account. And
Right.
that's the only system that I want those emails to be sourced from. So now when I go into the GHL environment and I'm wanting to send out a marketing bulk campaign, I want to also create a tier of isolation so that if maybe you guys mark my emails as spam, I hope that you don't do that, or there's really low engagement, over time, that's going to cause a detrimental impact on that sending reputation. So now, if I've got it properly aligned, including in my from display field, then it's only isolated to that specific subdomain. It's not going to bleed up to my root domain, which is funnel techie. So that's very important. And sending email in this fashion might feel really strange for some folks, but it's a really good practice to kind of get into. And I'll give you another example. If you guys look at some of the other emails that you might be getting from other companies, they are more than likely sending it using that sort of practice. And I'm going to give you an
Mhm.
example here.
We do the same thing.
Good.
Yeah, no, we have m.ghlpowertools.com, and then we have the DKIM and everything set up for that as well. And I
Okay.
think it's a good point, just making sure that you have right. What we can show you how to set up, and you know, a high level makes it easy to set up those things.
Mhm.
So it's a difference between somebody setting up just that subdomain for
Yeah.
it, or just using their root domain when they're
Yeah.
setting up their email address.
Yeah. And so this is just one quick example of an email in the wild. This is from Ancestry.
Okay.
And you can see that they're doing the exact same approach that Jason and I are discussing. So that from display field matches the sign by field, which again is the domain key field. And that would be the domain that you've got attached to the GHL sub account. So just kind of understand that that is being utilized, and it's a great practice.
And I think you know what it's customers that you're sending the emails to, they're not looking at
Yeah.
what subdomain that you're sending stuff from.
Right.
You know, if they're gonna like open up an email like this one says m.funneltechie, they're just seeing the domain in there,
Yeah.
right? So it's not gonna turn people off from it.
Yeah.
And then because of that, all your emails are gonna end up in your conversations tab inside of high level there.
Mhm. Yeah, exactly. For replies, you mean?
Yeah,
Yeah, certainly. Yeah. Um, so let's see, what else can we talk about? So let's kind
yeah,
of go over the foundation of deliverability in general.
sure.
So one thing that I see in the very beginning is that let's assume that you're going to go into LC email or whatever system it is. You get the subdomain connected, you've got SPF, DKIM, DMARC in place. All of those things are going to be apparent. So we know that your foundation, technically speaking, is good. But if you have an already existing list, let's say you've got a list size of maybe 10,000 contacts, and you've gone into a sub account, you've got everything connected, and now you're like, okay, I'm ready to go. I want to send my first email. The very first thing that you don't want to do is select all 10,000 contacts and send an email. The reason is because that subdomain is more than likely new. And it's also sending from a different set of IPs. So, all of that being said, what's going to happen is that if you do that, all of these different mailbox providers, whether it be Outlook, Yahoo, Gmail, they're going to be like, WTF, this is way too much. I don't know what's going on. We've never seen this from this domain before. There's way too many emails. And so what's going to happen, you're going to see this flood of deferrals. You're going to see very low engagement. The inbox provider is going to send some messages to spam and other pieces to the inbox. It's going to kind of be all over the board.
Mhm.
And it's going to take you a long time to recorrect that problem that was done in the very beginning. So if you're in that boat and you already have an existing list and you've not sent any email, the better approach would be to still do a warm up, a very quick one. And the way that I do it, it's pretty much cookie cutter across the board for me. I send 200 emails each day for the first few days.
Okay.
You don't have to create like a drip sequence to send so many out every 5 minutes, every 10 minutes. You don't necessarily need to do that. So I just do a dump of 200 contacts for an email flow and do that for, whatever time you set and just have it send out. And what you're looking for is that allow that to run for at least 3 days. And so ideally, you would have maybe three value packed emails to be used in your warm up sequence. So 3 to 4 value packed emails. You put those inside of a workflow. And then in between those, of course, would be maybe a wait of maybe 24 to 48 hours. And then what you do is go into your contacts, and let me open up mine. Give me a moment.
Mhm.
This is something that not too many people know about. Let me go into my hub. Come on. So you've gone in, you've created those emails, you've got that into a workflow. It's set, it's published. Now you want to push some contacts into it. So let's say that we've identified a set of contacts that would probably be more than likely the best candidates for engagement. So you want to locate those if you've got that information. So let's say that we've done that. We've identified those contacts. Now we've gone in, we've selected them. We want to use the add to automation button. And then we want to make sure the automation type is set to workflow. And then make sure that you name that workflow email warm up or something so you can very easily identify it. I don't have a warm up sequence in here, but let's pretend like maybe it's this Asana dev test workflow. So we've selected it. And now we're going to say add in drip mode. So keep in mind that this audience selection, maybe you selected maybe 5,000 contacts, okay? But we want to say add in drip mode. The action, we want to say email warm up, just so that we can go back later into bulk actions and identify it for another specific reason, which I'll talk about here in just a moment.
Okay.
So batch quantity, we want to say 200, and we want to repeat this every day. I typically don't like sending campaigns on Saturdays and Sundays, so I'm going to uncheck those. And if we wanted to, we could say process between hours, which is optional. We could, it's not really necessary, but I'm still going to do it just for the sake of this example. So I typically always do between 9 and about 3:30 p.m. Okay. So now I'm going to make sure this is the 14th. So I'm going to say Monday. And I'm going to say I want the first set of emails to go out just before 9 a.m. So I'm going to set it at maybe 8:45 a.m. on Monday. And then I'm going to say add to automation. Okay.
Yeah.
So let's say that you've allowed that to do its thing. Knowing though that you've got 3 email actions in the workflow, what's going to happen is that once this starts, it's going to push 200 contacts into the first email. Those 200 contacts will have received it. Now they're pushed down to the first wait clause. Now,
Yeah.
tomorrow,
I'll share my screen. I just actually built the workflow as you're talking about it.
good.
So
And then,
the only thing I did was I added a drip mode at the top of the workflow, so you could essentially just dump everybody into there if you wanted to.
yeah, you could do that. That is another way. Yep. And
So
so
yeah,
what's going to happen is that at full capacity, you're going to have 600 total contacts within that entire workflow. So that's a perfect cadence for that first week. And so what you're looking for is that you want to make sure that your unsubscribes are less than 1%. We want to make sure that our spam complaint rate is under 0.08. And then we want to make sure that our open rate is around or above 40%. That's what I
how
aim
do we
for.
check that, and how do we make sure that it depend on the quality of your list
It
too.
does. Yeah.
Um, so how do we check to see those statistics?
So if you're using LC email, you'd have to go under settings and then email services. And if you got an example, I don't have LC email,
Okay.
but there are some stats within that area. Or you could focus
Go to it.
on if you go into the workflow that you created, you could
Yeah.
simply look at the stats per email. And as long as you're kind of in that neighborhood, that's a good sign.
Yeah, sure. So yeah, we switched. We did have everything on Mailgun in the beginning, and we
Mhm.
switched over to LC just to make things a little bit more simple. But so under email services in our account here, we can say we can see that we've got 2,354 emails sent, 340 delivered, 868 opened. Is that what you're talking about there, or would it be under risk assessment, I wonder? Or no,
Let's see.
14 bounced, so 1% of the emails that we just sent bounced. That would be probably from some new contacts that we
Yeah.
have who've opted in for things or submitted things, and then we've had one unsubscribe.
Okay. Those are good. And what was your open rate again on that one?
Uh, 40%, 37%. So far, that was probably from the email that I just sent this morning.
Okay, that's good. Yeah, and that okay, yeah, that's good. Yeah, so that's perfect. And so that's a really good sign. Um, so where was I at? So okay, so things are going well for the first week. Now what you want to do in order to kind of get up to a sending frequent or a sending cadence where you can send out to more of a mass audience, we still want to continue that expansion of the initial set of contacts that you started with. So knowing that I started with a batch size of 200, what we want to do is assuming the stats are where I just mentioned or above, then you're at a good point to start doubling that frequency or doubling the audience. So what you'd need to do is go back into contacts and go to bulk actions. Go to this one says queued. I don't know if it will let me do what I want to do. Yeah, it will. So you want to find the action label called email warmup, go to edit, and now we want to begin doubling that puppy. So now we can say batch quantity 400, save. And so the next batch will send in 400. And then as long as the stats are still in the neighborhood that I mentioned, we will continue doing this every day until it's a compounding effect. So from there, it becomes very clear of how quickly you can get up to scale. So that is exactly how I do it. And that's a key component with a warm up. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yep.
I love that. I've never thought to go just change the
Hmm.
the batch quantity in
Yep.
there. I'm assuming you could probably do the same thing in the workflow as well. I
Probably.
wonder, I wonder, yeah. I would never
I
tried.
have not used the workflow in that fashion, but
Yeah.
you probably could. Yeah.
Um, Chris asked, can you restate the ideal numbers for like bounces and what you want
Sure
to try
can.
and stay under?
Yeah. So so we want our opens to be around 40% or greater, ideally. Um, we want our bounce rate to be ideally, we would certainly definitely want it to be under 5%, but for a warm up, under a 2% would be ideal so that we know that we've got a good set of addresses that
Mhm.
are not going to hard bounce. So under 2%. Our spam complaint rate needs to be under 0.08. And then our unsubscribe rate needs to be well under a 1% threshold. Yep.
Very cool. Um, let's see. Chris is asking, Chris, you asked earlier about the example of the wrong approach. And I'm assuming that when you said wrong approach, you meant like how not to send like emails out from your or what email addresses to use. Is that correct? Or did that get answered? And then Chris, if you're on here, you can unmute yourself too and then just say, um,
Hey, yeah, Jason, thanks so much, man. All I was looking for is just Matt. You were talking about the alignment and just
Oh,
making
yeah.
sure that email, because this is one of the biggest problems that we suffer from, is
mm,
just poor email open. And
Okay.
I've never heard it expressed the fact of having it all aligned.
Mhm.
I
yeah,
think I understand that. Can you give some examples of, I'll say, for lack of a better term, bad alignment
here I can show you
possible?
ours.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. Do
then
you have
Or
an
maybe,
example, Jason?
yeah, so here's the email that we send from
I can't
m.ghl
see your
power
screen.
tools. Oh, you can't see. I might have said like duplicate sharing, so let me just see here. Is that working?
It's coming. There we go. Yep.
Okay, so here we're sending from m.jhlpowertools.com, and the email address that we're sending from here is m.jhlpowertools. Now, some people will set up their dedicated domain, but um, they'll just send from Jason at GHL Power Tools. They won't send from the same thing, or they would send from Jason Orban at Gmail or something like that from within their workflows, or the workflows or the messaging that they're sending out from, or their campaigns or whatever. They would use this. Now, High Level added in a new thing that when you go to send out a campaign, it's going to have the authorized domain in there. So you don't want to, it won't, I don't think it will even allow you to send out an email campaign from a different email address anymore. But just to make sure that you're using the domain that you've already approved. So if you went into campaigns, I'll open this up in a new tab. If you go into campaigns, create campaign. Oh, what's that? No, why did I do that? Oh, wrong campaign. I still have campaigns from marketing in there. I should have shut it off. But if we go to new, let's go blank real quick, set something up. Sender schedule. So if we go into sender's email, like if I tried to send Jason at gmail.com, it's going to say it's not a verified address anymore. This is in the campaign builder. But if I go to m.jhlpowertools.com, it will say it's email verified. This is in the email campaign builder. But you can then change this to whatever you want, and it'll still come into High Level again. Matt, is there any, like, does it matter what we put here for deliverability? Would it, if we're using Jason at m.jhl power tools for a lot of things, and then we change it to sales, would that impact deliverability, or is it mostly just looking for the domain?
Yeah, mostly, yeah. So what Jason's speaking to, anything before the at symbol, that's the namespace. And so
Mhm.
that part of it doesn't necessarily matter, although Google does say that it's a best practice to sort of align different things according to the type of email. Whether that maybe is a receipt email, put receipt at.
Okay.
If it's a marketing, you could put, it's something to identify different types of emails.
Yeah.
You could do that, but what really matters most is that the domain reputation. So that's where everything is being built from as far as the reputational data goes. Um, I
I
do
was
have
gonna,
one more thing to
okay.
mention to Chris.
Yes.
Those were good points that you made, Jason. The other aspect is that let's say that you've added your subdomain. And so let's just use my example of m.funneltechie.com. And you go into your from name field. So, if go ahead, Jason, actually put in this one, this is a perfect time to show it. So,
Sure.
Jason at m.ghl Pro Tools or Power Tools. Sorry. And then in your from name, just put
Yep.
Jason at ghlpowertools.com. So let's say that you configured an email to be sent in this fashion. Okay, is that acceptable? It is, but there is a potential problem. So even though the organizational domain, ghlpowertools.com, does align, there's going to be complete alignment across the board. So it's going to meet the requirements that Google and Yahoo are looking for. So that's okay. But what's going to happen is that now, if you send this email like this to a Microsoft contact, which is either Office 365 or Outlook or Hotmail,
Okay.
they're going to display it very differently. So that's one aspect. And I'll show you what that looks like. The
Okay.
other thing to consider too is that knowing that inside of the envelope, there are now two domains attached. What's going to happen is that let's say that Jason gets all of a sudden a lot of spam complaints or low engagement, negative signals, right? What's going to happen is that since both domains are attached to the email envelope, it's going to now be included in both of those domain reputations. So now the root domain's been tainted along with the sending the m.ghl power tools. So that's another reason why I like complete alignment and making sure that we've got tiers of isolation to help protect the root. Because if we ever need to spin up a different subdomain, we want to make sure that we always protect the root, and at that point we can, and that reputation won't, be bled down to the new one that we're creating. So
Right.
that's a point to be made. And let me pull up another example. I'll share
Yeah,
my screen here.
absolutely.
1 second. Regarding the Microsoft way. So if you sent an email like that, the way it would look in Outlook, let me see if I can find an example.
Kimberly,
This is a great example, actually.
okay, go ahead.
Sorry, guys. You guys know who, I don't mean to pick on Dan Henry,
Oh,
but
yeah.
um, so he's doing exactly what I just discussed. So basically, he's got reply.getclients.com inside of his high level account, but he's sending email from getclients.com. And so if you do it in this fashion, then this is exactly the display line. And we don't want that. It looks weird.
So like his name in there is no, he's using danhen at getclients.com at reply.getclients.com.
Yeah. So he's, yeah, Dan
Oh,
H
I've never
at
seen somebody
GetClient.
do that before. Weird.
Yeah. So I see that a lot. And that's something that has been taught by some people in the high level space. And I mean, you can get by with it, but you can see that if you're doing it in this fashion, it makes it look spammy to the contact. Um,
Yeah, it
So that's
does.
that's that's why I don't like using it. So if you created that full alignment, then that won't happen. And the other example that I show you is mine. So this is exactly the way mine looks. So everything is fully aligned inside of my emails.
Hmm. It does look a lot more legit.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I've never seen
So
somebody do put the email address in front and then the at and then do another email address at the end. Like yeah, that's interesting.
mhm.
Um, Kim just asked one question. What's the reason of using workflows over campaigns? Um, Campaigns are basically for a one-time send, and then workflows are going to be allow you to set up multiple different emails to go out over a period of time. You can set up automations for things to be triggered off of that. Whereas a campaign, you're going to set it up, and when you send out a campaign, that's like just sending a one blast to your
Yeah.
list or whoever you choose to. Where you can set up those emails inside of a workflow if you wanted multiple to go out, and then
Like a nurture
you can have
sequence.
them, yeah, like a nurture sequence. You could have a nurture sequence set up. So that's really the difference. You could do the same thing with campaigns. You just have to do it manually or schedule those ones to go out. But if you like, yeah, you had a nurture sequence set up for day one when somebody signs up, you can have day one, day three, day five, whatever, go out in the workflows. Whereas with a campaign, you're basically only sending that out once. Even if you schedule it, you can't add people to that campaign later. Hopefully that
Yeah.
answers it. That makes sense. I got a question for you about DMARC. Do you put much emphasis, like, do you go out and create, or do you use a default DMARC setup that, like, say, high level gives you through LC, which is just the basic version, or do you go out and create another DMARC? And I guess, what's the importance of DMARC?
Yeah. Okay. Let's talk about the importance of DMARC. So DMARC goes hand in hand with SPF and or DKIM. So DMARC is almost like, okay, you've got a jar and it's your security jar. And inside of that jar is SPF and DKIM. So now DMARC comes along and it's now the cap of that jar and you twist it on. So now it's all in, you've got full security is what I'm talking about. So that's the key. So what happens is that DMARC is there to protect your domain from spoofing. So if maybe
Okay.
a malicious person wanted to use your domain, has the authority aspect and send email from that domain, there are many ways of doing that. So that's why authentication and DMARC are very important. So if a malicious person tried to send email on your domain's behalf, um, that email is not going to be written by you. The audiences that are sending the email to is not your normal audience. And so it could have a detrimental impact on your domain's reputation. So in order to protect it, DMARC was created for that extra layer of protection. So DMARC has three different policies that you can assign to it. There is a none policy, which is typically provided for just monitoring purposes. It's not really doing anything to protect you.
I think that's the default from that high level
Yeah.
provides to you.
Yeah, DMARC can also be kind of dangerous, so that's why they do it in a none fashion.
Okay.
And I'll explain that in more detail in just a moment. And then there's a quarantine policy. So let's say that an email was sent out maliciously, and you've got a quarantine policy assigned to it. Well, if maybe SPF or DKIM doesn't align to the with the DMARC domain,
Right.
then basically what's going to happen is that that email will be sent to the spam folder because there's no alignment. And so that's the purpose of quarantine. The reason I don't like to use quarantine in that fashion is that, well, my email, if that happened and I've got a quarantine policy, that email is still going to be sent to the spam folder. I still don't want that to happen. I don't want anyone to see that email. So what I do in my world, I have reject. Now, what reject does in that same scenario is that it just goes to the dev null basket. It goes to space. It's not going to be seen. It's just going to vanish. And so that's ideally what I want. But there's a lot of reasons why you probably wouldn't want to use reject in the very beginning, especially if you don't know kind of what's happening under the hood. But one tip is that knowing that you are creating an email subdomain in Mailgun or LC email, and you know that you've not used that same subdomain in any other capacity or any other system, then in that instance, it would be okay to assign a reject policy to that DMARC because you've got proper alignment. So we know we got SPF created. We know that we've got DKIM in place. And knowing that that's the only domain, it's assigned to Mailgun or LC, then it's safe to go ahead and use a reject policy for the subdomain.
So you wouldn't want to do that for your main domain.
Correct. Now, your main domain could be it's different across the board. So, your main domain may be connected in either Office 365 or Google Workspace.
Right.
It could be attached to some other system that maybe you've forgotten about. So we want to make sure that, at a root level, put in a DMARC policy set to none until you kind of know the intricacies of, what you need to do and you understand kind of the systems that root domain is tied to. But, if you really know what you're doing and you know that for each of those systems, you've got SPF and DKIM properly accounted for, then you could move to a reject policy if you want. I will show you what mine looks like.
Sure.
So I'm a tech guy. In the beginning of my career, over I guess 20 years ago, I used to build Microsoft Exchange email servers for companies.
Okay.
I used to build custom Linux, XM, SendMail, Postfix, MTAs, and so that's a lot. That's a lot of where my tech background came from in the email fashion or the email context. But so what I'm going to show you is my funnel techie DMARC policy for my root domain. And so you can see here that V equals DMARC 1. So the word DMARC, even though this is a DNS record, it is absolutely critical that this be capitalized. Okay, we can't use lowercase. If you're geeks and you want to look into this, there's an RFC article about DMARC that was used to create this. And they've specified that DMARC has to be capitalized. That's the main component. And there's a semicolon. And then the next flag, all of these are tags. The next tag must be the policy. So P equals none, quarantine, or reject. So the P flag must come next after the versioning of DMARC. So these two are the most critical pieces to have correct. So the next line that I've got here is an RUA tag. This is used for reporting purposes. It's an aggregation report. That's what that stands for. And basically, I'm just sending a report to this entity. This one, this RUF is a forensics report. Basically, just it's going to give me more detail. These other flags are not super important. Um, and this is all kind of a flex, but I've got a very I want everything to be hyper protected in my world, so I use these advanced flags for strict alignment. That's not something that I
Oh,
encourage
okay.
you guys to use. PCT equals 100 is actually on by default for everyone, unless you change it. But I've got mine specified just because I'm anal. I like to see it. And then the FO equals 1 would be safe for everyone to use. That's just a reporting option for DMARC. So basically, that states if SPF or DKIM does not align, I'm going to get a report on it. And so that's what that is.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So I know there's some like I don't know nearly as much about DMARC as you do. I've read some about it, and I've used some of like the stuff at the website like dmarc.org. They've got a lot of
Yeah.
resources
Yes.
on DMARC, and then they've got some DMARC generators
Hmm.
there too. But I know even if I go through those, it's I'm not even sure what I'm doing.
Yeah.
I've gone through and set some of them up. So like I have mine set to like P none, and then I've got a couple email addresses in there for reporting. And then I have I think mine says um, SP equals none or something like that for it.
Yeah.
But um, it works. So I don't know. I've heard it's better to go through and have some more of those features in there than just having the basic one, but it's still good to have at least the basic one in there. Um, and I feel like high levels might have added some new things now that it will automatically put that DNS record in for you. I think we tried to set it up once at on another, or the last time we tried to set it up, that DNS record did go in there. Whereas before it was something that you had to do manually. So they would do you automatically high level when you set up your domain name, it's automatically going to do the DKIM one. It's going to automatically do like your MX records, and it's going to do the SPF one for you. And then I feel like maybe now it will automatically do the DMARC one for you as well.
I
Um,
think it does.
yeah, but in the beginning when they first started doing it, there was they did not. So it was something that you had to go do manually. You still had to go into GoDaddy or Cloudflare or whatever and add that text record afterwards.
Yeah. What I was going to do here is kind of show everyone if you're wanting to just put in DMARC and you want to make sure that it's safe and it's not going to cause problems, this is typically what I do. I'm just going to reference it real quick. Now, this one underscore DMARC, if I don't have a period and some other name, so like this right here will be my subdomain.
Right.
So this would be setting a subdomain. But if, well, let me just leave it. So let's say that we want to do that and you want to play it safe. Well, what I would do is do this. So out of the box, it would look something like this.
Yeah.
I'm going to put it here in chat just so everyone can see that value if you want to copy it. So that is perfectly safe. It's not going to cause problems. And that's typically a default setting that I use across the board with people initially. And then eventually, as I am working in their system and get to know everything, then I start moving things to a different policy level, meaning reject at some point in the future. But this right here is perfectly safe for everyone to use.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, and then high level does the same thing, but a similar thing, but they don't add the PCT 100 or the FO one. They don't do any of that. It's just a DMARC P equals none to as the default setting in there. I just wanted, yeah. So one amazing thing I wanted to touch on, I think, is if you when you're setting up your domain, high level will go and automate most of that stuff for you. Like it'll add in most of the records, but it won't. I don't think Chris just said to the DMARC is still manual. So I still think it's important to copy that DMARC record and go put it into your DNS for that for your domain. They give you the record, but they don't automatically do it. So it's a couple extra steps, but I think it's a big step towards deliverability.
Yeah. Yep.
Um, does anybody have any questions for Matt here? Or while we kind of go and wrap things up. I think so. So one of some of the things that we touched on today here was just make sure your email addresses are the same that you're sending from inside of your high level account. Um, so if you set up a domain for example m.jhlpowertools.com as your domain, make sure that's the domain that you're sending from within high level. Make sure you add that to your workflows, and then even for sending out email messaging back to customers through the conversations tab, make sure you set that up. Do you have any tips on, I don't know if you experience this, is when you set up a user account inside of high level, because sometimes we set up a user account and it has a different email address, and then every time we go to send an email, it wants to use that other email address rather than the one we set up. I'm just going to take a look here. Um,
And they're probably using that in the
yeah,
context of assigning a user, maybe, or sending a one-on-one in the contact card. Yeah, that can be a problem. Um,
I feel like it changed because I used to have to change it all the time to send an email. Um, Yeah. So for example, here I want to show you guys this is um go big at thinkbigstudios.ca is my main account, like my main email address that I have here. But so when I go to reply to a customer or reply to somebody in here, um it's going to have it puts go big at thinkbigstudios.ca, which is my like user login one rather than Jason at m.jhlpowertools.com. So what you can do is you can have a different user account created that has the email address you want to send from. I'm not even sure if that would have to look at what might be a better practice for doing it rather than changing it all the time. But I know when you log in with your user to that account, it'll have that email address that you're sending from. But then if you like the go big at thinkbigstudios.ca wouldn't be in alignment with what I have inside of high level here. So same thing with I know Courtney asked like what are some examples of how we kind of keep those our statistics higher or like lower, like the good statistics high and bounces and stuff like that lower. um One is having the DNS records because the like Google and Yahoo and Microsoft, they're going to be looking at where you're sending from and do you have those records in place so that they can verify that you're a legit sender and you're not a spammer, right? So that's one thing. Making sure that you don't have spam words inside of your email address, like too many of them. We don't have, I don't think we're going to cover like what words don't to not use inside of your emails that you're sending out in order to stop spam and to lower those numbers. Um, but there's definitely a lot of tools. I don't know, Matt, do you have a tool that you check spam scores with for emails that you're sending out? Like I typically don't. I just try not to put a lot of like I know capitalization in free and a whole bunch of other stuff in there. And then sometimes I cross my fingers when I send stuff out.
yeah, like, I'll just say this, the systems like Mail Tester or Mail Genius,
Yeah,
they could be useful in some way because it kind of does, they use what's called Spam Assassin, which is an old system that's been around
right.
for a very long time, but it's good. And it's able to identify spammy type words. So if you're curious about that, that might be a good thing to use. Although those systems also, especially Mail Genius, they push you, they try to scare you in a way. And so they try to
Okay.
push you into a funnel process to get your business.
Yeah.
So for that reason, and I don't like to use it because sometimes the things that they display in red and those signals that they're providing you, you may think, oh God, something's bad is going to happen if I don't get this fixed. So, and a lot of it is not correct information. So just kind of just be aware of that. I'm trying to find a document that I created with something that I want to give you everyone.
Okay.
Give me one moment.
Sure.
I will find that here.
I'll just
Synovio, that's what I was looking for. So let me pull that up.
Yeah, so Courtney, like some other good just making sure you have your I know we've been able to increase in like delivery to the inbox definitely by just making sure that we have our all our records correct in there that we're sending from the subdomain that we're setting up. You can even do the same thing too. I know I've talked with a bunch of you about setting up a subdomain for your client. So for example, if we were under if we just had one domain that we were using for all of our clients, not necessarily just for email, but like let's say, like for example, we've got freshrep.com, which is what we will do a subdomain, which is clientname.freshrep.com. We can also go and set up a subdomain for that client when we're setting up their account. So we can do something like m.client.freshrep com. I'll share my screen. I realize I'm not sharing. We can set this up too. Um, so you can do multiple domains like this. So you can have m.clientname.freshrep.com. Freshrep being the domain you're using for multiple clients instead of trying to go get their domain and everything set up. So this would also create a different subdomain that you're sending them from their email. Now you just want to make sure that all your workflows and everything, when they're sending out from their high level account, they're sending out from this domain. So it would be like Jason at m.client.freshrep.com, which would be their sending domain. You still want to warm that up and everything, but you can set that up for those customers and then just make sure that they know that that's the email address that they're sending from as well. And you can even, I think, create their user account for that's the email address they send from too. So it's just a matter of making sure that you're sending from those email addresses that you set up inside of here. One other thing that I've noticed is we can't have multiple domains that work really well in here. So some of the stuff that we used to have where we tried to send out from different domains inside of high level, now we've moved those to different sub accounts where we have separate lists too. So for one of our things that we do is send out a Friday newsletter from TLDR highlevel.com. And we used to have that in here, but then it became a pain to try and send from Power Tools or TLDR in the same kind of thing. We had to switch things around, and we ended up moving TLDR over to a completely different sub account so that we could just manage all the emails from that sub account.
Yeah, it makes sense.
All right, and then Matt, if you want to talk about oh, the spam trigger words.
Yeah, that's something just, so people can put eyes on it. Just something to be mindful of. It's not always the case, but if you use too much of those types of words in an email, it could flag some systems. So just take it with a grain of salt and just be aware that
Yeah.
that could cause problems. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah, well, I don't know if you guys have any other questions for Matt. Otherwise, Matt, how do I'll let Courtney does have a question, I think.
Yeah, yeah. So I just wanted to expound. First of all, thank you guys for this information.
Yeah.
I wanted to expound on what's happening right now, Jason, is when I sign a client up, and I'll use a lead funnel, lead generation funnel that I have.
Hmm.
I created a quiz, whereas people go in and take the quiz and they get their results to kind of make awareness of the issue that they have. But what's happening is when the quiz results go, when they usually end up in spam or whatever. So I'm wondering if there's a certain amount of emails that you have to send before the system recognizes, like, let everything through, or maybe something I'm doing wrong. I don't know. Why is it landing in their spam box?
Okay, so one thing to know is that pay attention to what domain you're sending emails to. So is it an Outlook.com address? Is it Hotmail or is it Gmail or Yahoo? That could give you an idea of, okay, so maybe this problem with spam is just isolated to a particular mailbox provider. So that's number one. You're going to have an easier time probably sending to Yahoo and or Gmail. Microsoft tends to be a problem. The reason for that is because of maybe not necessarily because of your domain reputation, but more than likely due to the sending IP that's a part of the email, because every email gets sent from a particular server, and that server has an IP address, and the IP address influences kind of where that's going to land in the beginning. So that could be a problem. It would just be a matter of sort of going through that system to see exactly what could cause it. Sort of pay attention though, because look back and see where you're having your issues. One way that you could do it, instead of asking your audience, what I would do is create yourself an inbox in Gmail, Yahoo, Outlook.com. Let's see, Gmail, Outlook, Yahoo, iCloud, any other ones that you can think of that you want to test, and send an email to each of those so that you've got access, and just don't influence it. If it landed in spam, don't move it over, just leave it be, but just take a glance at it and see where it landed. And that could tell you a bit more about what potentially could be an issue.
Yeah, yeah. So to your point, Matt, actually, when I do tests, I have 5 other people in the house with me. Jason knows my wife, Danica.
Mhm.
So
Okay.
I'll get them to kind of test the thing. And the crazy part is my daughter has an iCloud account, and it
Mhm.
always goes through for hers. But like Danica has a Gmail, my other daughters have Yahoo and all this other stuff, and
Okay.
those are landing in spam.
Okay. Well, then next, what you need to do is make sure that you go to GPT, Google Postmaster Tools. Let me bring mine up. Do we still have time? We still
Yeah,
good?
yeah, yeah. We're good.
Courtney, so this is, if you go to postmaster.google.com, I don't know if you can see that. I think I'm being blocked. There you go. And basically, this is only from the perspective of Google, but this will be a great place to start. And so you may see, if you've never used it before, it'll probably say get started. So click get started, or you can click the plus symbol. And what I want you to do is put in the organizational domain. So for me, it would be Funnel
Okay.
Techie. So put that in place, hit next, and then get it verified. So the next thing it's going to ask you, so I'm going to put in, I don't know, ClickFunnels real quick. And so I'm not an owner of that, nor do I have access, but it's wanting you to put in a TXT record. Once you do that, it's going to verify that you're at least an owner or an admin. So it's going to verify it. Now, once that's done, what you could do is, let's say that you're sending from a different subdomain. So maybe m.funneltechie. Go back and add the subdomain as well. That will instantly verify for you. So now what you're looking for is this. In a perfect scenario, I'm just going to go to Buck to always use them as the example. So this is a root, organizational root domain. But what you're looking for is that I'm going to change, let me collapse that a little bit. What you're looking for is that you want to change last 7 to last 120. And you're wanting to take a snapshot of your spam rate. So for Bucked Up there, this is a perfect pattern for spam. It's pretty much non-existent, but maybe you've got huge spikes across the board. If you do, that can play into the domain reputation. So get a feel for what that looks like. Next, go to your IP reputation category. We certainly don't want to ever see low or bad in this area. We want to see certainly green. That would be ideal because it's high. But if you have IPs that are showing and you've got these gold columns, that's okay. I'm not so much worried about it. But if it is low or bad, then you've got some IP deliverability. Oh, you've got some IP reputation issues. So that could be a big part of what you're experiencing has a problem. So take note of that. And then next, go to domain reputation. Domain reputation needs to be high. It can be medium, and you can still be landing in the inbox with no problem. In fact, if your domain reputation is at medium, you probably won't even notice it as a marketer. However, if it's low or bad, then you're going to feel it. Trust me. So just kind of get a feel for where that is. And depending on all of this data that you get back will determine kind of what your next steps could be. So if your root domain has a bad or low reputation, it is certainly repairable, but just know that it's going to take many weeks, probably at least 6 weeks or longer, to get that reputation built back up. There's a whole process. Maybe we can do another one, Jason, some point in the future and talk about different strategies to get a domain repaired, perhaps.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah,
but
or
it could be
yeah.
an uphill battle. Um, where was I going with that? So if it is low or bad, since it's going to be, you're up against time, it could be that maybe, well, it might be a good signal for you to create a brand new domain entirely and rebuild on that. It just really depends on different situations. But that will kind of give you an idea of what potentially could be happening.
Thank you. I really appreciate that.
Yeah,
And
you're
then,
welcome.
yeah, I would also just make sure that the email addresses that you're sending from through your reply from your workflow too are the same domain that you set up inside your high level account. Just I'll just say that again so that you know that your from email is the same. So because that will help as well. Um,
One more thing that I'll mention, I
yeah,
know
go
we're
ahead.
kind of over time, but the most critical thing and the thing that I see across the board with all of my clients, and I just do email deliverability, that's all I do, is list hygiene. And when I talk about list hygiene, it means that you've got a set of contacts you've been sending email to, and then over time, they're going to sort of disengage with you naturally. Maybe they are not unsubscribing, but maybe they see your email and they avoid it. They immediately delete it, kind of thing. So that would be one example. Or worse yet, this is big for any Gmail users, especially contacts, is that if a Gmail contact marks your emails as spam, you as a marketer, as a GHL sub-account owner, will not even know that that's occurred. Google does not put that through a feedback loop back to the provider. So then now you're not going to know that they've marked you as spam. So guess what? Every additional email that you send in the future is still going to be sent to those people and it's going to land in their spam folder, which then brings down your engagement rate. So that's another negative signal. So over time, your domain reputation that was high is going to start to fall. And so list hygiene and having a proper sunset policy put in place is a key component. And that's something, Jason, you and I can collaborate
Yeah,
on. I've got a system that I built for it. Maybe we can talk more about that at a later point.
totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, this has been an awesome call, Matt. There's been a ton of information here. Courtney just says, how does he work with you? Yeah, so Matt, how do people get in touch with you if they want more information
I
or
tell
they
you
want
what,
to chat with you?
yeah, I've got a couple of things. I think it might be better for people. I've got if you just saw my Facebook profile, Inbox or Bust, right? I've got a newsletter that I just started this year called Inbox Ready. Can I put that address
Yeah,
in,
yeah,
Jason?
yeah. Throw your info in there.
I'll put inboxready.funneltechie.com. I would encourage everyone to be a part of that. Um, and so basically every Sunday, it's a newsletter that's sent out every week. And basically I'm doing a brain dump into my newsletter so that you guys are aware of what can cause problems, what you need to do, things that you need to be aware of. And where I'm centered around GHL, it's perfect for you guys. There's lots of stuff that I've already built, and so a lot of that information is going to my blog. So every newsletter gets published on my blog. So I'm going to put that in place as well. And so you can go back and look at the ones that I've already published um, and just start consuming it. And if you got questions, you can send me an email. You can reply back to the Inbox Ready newsletter as it comes out. I see them. So that's one good way to start interacting with me.
Nice. Yeah, and then you can find Matt at funneltechie.com as well. And you can reach out to him on Facebook there as well. He's you'll find his profile there. I think we showed it earlier. Yeah, Matt's a ton of information. He can help you with your email deliverability. So yeah, reach out to him if you can. And if you need some help, I think he's an amazing resource.
Thanks, Jason. Appreciate that.
Yeah. So, yeah, we'll just wrap it up for today. Thank you again for being here. Thank you everybody for hanging out for the last hour while we went through email stuff. I think it's so important and it's something that we completely overlook, and a lot of people just don't even know how to get started in it. Or, we kind of follow the prompts that we get when we're setting up things. But there's a lot more information about, like, I'm glad we covered like warming up your email today, the domains, DMARC, all that kind of stuff, and just what it looks like to try and stay out of the spam box there. So again, I really appreciate it. And you guys reach out to Matt if you guys have any questions, and I'm sure he'll be happy to help you out.
Sounds good. Thanks, Jason, for having me.
All right. Thanks, you guys. Have a great rest of your Friday and have